What's up, everybody, and welcome to Team MBS Media's first episode of Game Recognized Game. I'm Zachary Draves, alongside my co-host Mello Williams, and both of us share a passion for two things, basketball and hip-hop. Much of our work at Team MBS Media and elsewhere revolves around these two, and it is precisely because of that we came up with this podcast. To commemorate the 50th anniversary of hip-hop, this podcast series explores the historical relationship between basketball and hip-hop at the intersection of race, culture, class, gender, history, and politics through interviews with athletes, artists, activists, journalists, and academics. In this monthly 5-episode series, we will go into depth about how both ball and rap are a match made in heaven. And topics covered will include the origins of hip-hop, the rise of the NBA, ABA, and WNBA, the growth of college basketball, the golden era of hip-hop, and activism and social justice. Certainly, hip-hop has found a place across the entire sporting landscape, but it all got started on the hardwood. And that is exactly what we will discuss tonight. We will explore the origins of hip-hop, how it found a place in basketball, celebrate some of the early pioneers of this cultural merger, and how it impacts the present day. We were supposed to have two guests joining us this evening, but Raheem Jarbo, otherwise known as Megaran, wasn't able to make it tonight due to a scheduling conflict, and he sends us his regrets. And as we wait on our second guest, I want to introduce my man Mello Williams, who I am thrilled to be joining in this podcast and co-hosting with. Mello, how you doing tonight, brother?
Man, Zach, my man, it feels good. I'm doing good. We blessed. Been looking forward to doing this. It's day one. I'm excited, man. So first and foremost, again, I appreciate this opportunity to be able to rock out with this game recognized game. As you said, it means so much to the both of us and so much to the world. You know, how hip hop and sports just really came together and just piggybacked off each other and just is a major influence in the world today. So, you know, we got a great special guest today with Doe from the Go from Chicago, Def Jam, A&R, Lifestyle, Marketing, Branding. A man who has worked with many of our favorite artists in the world today when it comes to R&B and hip hop. So we definitely looking forward to him jumping on and learning more about him and his impact in hip hop and how hip hop has impacted him in Chicago, in the Midwest, through basketball and hip hop through music.
Certainly. And as we wait to invite him on, as he waits to join us, just kind of wanted to start things off by acknowledging that we just passed the 50th anniversary of hip hop, the official date, which was August 11th, 1973. I mean, can you believe it? 50 years of hip hop.
50. Shout out to Team MBS Media, man. Shout out to Joe Cardozo, owner, operator of Team MBS Media, who's a huge hip hop head and a huge sports head. So first and foremost, man, Joe, we appreciate you. We thank you for giving us this platform, this opportunity to show our love and appreciation for sports and hip hop, specifically basketball and hip hop, right here on Team MBS Media.
Yeah, definitely. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Joe and for all of our partners at Team MBS Media that enable us to do what we do here. And I mean, just passing, we just a few days past the 50th anniversary of hip hop, and you think about where hip hop originated from in the South Bronx, and it all started at a back to school party. And ironically enough, here we are in back to school season where everybody's getting themselves together ready for the new school year. And DJ Kool Herc, also known as Clive Campbell, at his back to school party for his younger sister, decided to put a couple James Brown records together, and thus was able to birth hip hop just from such humble beginnings. I mean, can you believe, Mello? I mean, can you believe it's been 50 years?
50. I mean, and it's been 50 great years of just how hip hop has just transcended, like you said, from starting back then to where hip hop is at now. And that's the beautiful thing about it. It's just so many just different lifestyles and ways that hip hop has been branded. The culture of hip hop has been branded. Speaking of like fashion, shout out to Rich Kid Clothing, who's sponsoring my clothing tonight, and as also sponsoring Game Recognized Game. So definitely shout out to Rich Kid Clothing and to my homie Mark Wilson over at Rich Kid Clothing. But like you said, Zach, 50 years though, 50 years, it's so many iconic songs, so many iconic artists, groups, albums. I mean, just movements that just came from behind in 50 years of hip hop, So, man, it's gonna be a great few months to talk about, hip hop, and it's not gonna be enough because so much has happened. But it feels good to be able to commemorate 50 years of hip hop, though, no doubt about it.
Absolutely. And then it just makes us so excited about what the next 50 years has in store for hip hop, because hip hop has come such a long way during this whole time span that you wonder what the next 50 years has in store. And one thing that we know is for certain is that when it comes to basketball, that merger between hip hop and basketball ain't dying anytime soon. It's still going to be strong. It's going to be unbreakable, so nothing can break apart hip hop and basketball.
I mean, shout out to like Pee Wee Kirkland, Dr. J, Walt Frazier, guys that definitely took, the urban culture swag and took it to the professional league, to the ABA and to the NBA, and that's pretty much, and we're going to jump into that, but that was pretty much the beginning of, how hip hop and basketball bridged this up together, so Pee Wee Kirkland definitely don't get a lot of love and respect. He do, but he don't. No doubt about it. He's definitely a living legend. That had a major influence and impact on bridging the gap. Between basketball and hip hop.
Definitely, and it all got started at the Rucker Park in Harlem. That's where all the great ballers were able to get down and were able to show their talents. Certainly, Pee Wee Kirkland was a pioneer of that. And Dr. J, I mean, you can't think about Dr. J without, the Rucker and how the Rucker really shaped him into the icon that he became. I mean, if anything, like all you got to do is just go back and watch old footage of Dr. J at the Rucker. And that's even more remarkable than a lot of the things that, he did in the NBA and the ABA. I mean, certainly what he did in both those leagues was remarkable in and of itself, but but all the things that he was able to do for the Nets in the ABA and then the Sixers in the NBA all got started at the Rucker.
I mean, the home of so many legends. Like you said, that's where that was the ultimate playground for the showcasing, New York, so many boroughs, so many different playgrounds, where so many legends, was born at. But everybody, you had to show out at the Ruckers. If you was somebody, you left your borough, you left your playground, and you pulled up at the Ruckers, So it was definitely a pride thing, a New York City thing, man. And it went across, just like hip hop music. I'm from Wisconsin. And in my city, Beloit, Wisconsin, we definitely had our Rucker style park. It's called Summit Park. If you was somebody, everybody pulled up to Summit Park on Sundays and everybody was getting to it, had the music, had the DJs out there, so it was the same atmosphere, so that's another great thing about, the telling story in 50 years of hip hop, how it, it just wasn't only on in the basketball arenas, but it went to the playgrounds as well.
Definitely. And if anything, what you can do, kind of bringing it back to music here, not just hip hop, but music in general, and we're talking about Harlem, which is where Rucker Park is at, you can almost correlate that with the Apollo Theater. Like if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. That was sort of the testing ground for aspiring artists and aspiring ballers. The ballers were able to go to the Rucker, and then the artists were able to go to the Apollo. And if they were able to make it there in front of an audience that really paid attention to every single detail, and if you can win them over, then you're good. You got pedigree.
Yes.
And I think about, and it's funny because, when we were prepping for this podcast, Mello and I were joking about how we're Kobe and Shaq in this regard. Apparently I'm Shaq and he's Kobe. So
You Shaq though.
I'm Shaq. All right. Do I have to talk in a deeper voice? Do I have to do that? I'm just saying, I love Shaq. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he's the ultimate merger between basketball and hip hop. Certainly we'll talk more about that down the road. And Kobe kind of, if you ask me, Kobe kind of had to earn his chops when it came to hip hop, because he was always kind of seen in a different light than Shaq was in that regard. Kobe had a much different background, but I encourage everybody to look up and I'm sure you've seen this too, Mello, like the footage of Kobe I think it was 2002 when he showed up at the Rucker and was able to put on quite a show. I mean, that was legendary.
All-time legendary performance, And going back to the, about Kobe, he had to earn his respect more so in the hip hop community more than Shaq did. That's definitely true, and we definitely gonna jump into that in the next couple of episodes as well. But Kobe definitely, even being from Philly had impact on hip hop is definitely huge to this day. Some of the, and not just in hip hop, in music alone. Philadelphia has produced some of the greatest musicians of all time. So. Philly is Philly, and Philly is a city that you have to respond to, especially when you claim in the city of Philadelphia, So Kobe definitely had to earn his name on the basketball court and off the court as well. Dating an R&B superstar, Brandy at the time,
Yep.
And a lot of people forget Kobe did have a record himself. He did drop a song himself, So Kobe definitely earned his respect, and now that's why may he RIP anywhere you go, man, any inner city, wherever, any community. Kobe Bryant, man, is definitely missed in love, man, to this day, man, and his impact on hip hop and music. I mean, basketball has definitely been huge. But shout out to Shaq, man. Like you said, Shaq was, man. What hasn't Shaq been very impactful on? It's like anything Shaq touches, it blows up, right? So. Man, yeah, Shaq definitely did his thing. What do you feel about Shaq as a rapper? Did you like his music? Do you have a favorite song of Shaq? What?
Oh my God, I was just going to ask you the same question. I was going to ask you a different question about who was a better rapper, Shaq or Kobe. But I'm gonna have to, if I were to answer that question, I would have to go with Shaq just because he had a longer pedigree than Kobe. Not that Kobe, for what it was worth, because didn't he do a song with? He did a song with was it Brian McKnight that he did a song with?
It may have been. I can't remember. I just remember just remember the one song. But besides that, I'm with you though. Shaq definitely was. Shaq is an artist. He's a hip hop head.
Yes.
He has the marketing ability. He has the bars. He has his charisma. Shaq is a total package. So. He definitely took it more serious than Kobe did. Kobe passion and love was, playing basketball. But, we can't forget about Dame Lillard. We saw Shaq had his, little run with Damian Lillard. It was all in good faith, good competitiveness. And I won't say anybody won. I heard great bars from both sides. So what's your thoughts on Dame Lillard as an artist, as a rapper?
I think he's incredible. I think he's very multi-talented, and he certainly has been able to come into his own. And if anything, I think he didn't have to worry about proving himself in the way that guys before him had to do that. And what I mean by that is when you look at guys like Shaq, or you look at guys like Kobe, or you look at Allen Iverson, when it came to, I mean, obviously AI and Shaq, like their merger with hip hop is evidence. I mean, just in their whole aesthetic. But I think when it came to like the music side of them, they kind of had to prove themselves as legitimate artists. Whereas Damian Lillard was able to come up in a time where he didn't necessarily have to prove himself in the way they did. He could just put out an album and put out music, and it was seen as legitimate. And from what I've heard from him is that he certainly got a lot of talent, and obviously right now, who knows what his basketball career has in store for him. I mean, obviously with what's going on with some of the negotiations with him and what his future holds for basketball. But when it comes to music, I mean, he's already shown himself to be someone who is certainly very legitimate.
No doubt about it. Allen Iverson, he dropped an album that ended up getting banned. David Stern banned it, told him that he couldn't drop it, So I definitely feel that like Shaq, Damian Lillard, he grew up, wanting to be a rapper at some point, and he had a love of being, had a love for hip hop music and wanted, be a rapper. Growing up in the Bay Area, he was probably a huge fan of E40, so Too Short, So being from Oakland, being from the Oakland area, MC Hammer, it's a long list of talents, from the Bay Area. That would be why I could see why Damian Lillard, may have wanted to be a rapper or, and just love hip hop music as a whole, for sure.
Yeah.
Chris Webber, he had a nice little song too. He dropped a little song too. So hip hop and basketball, it's definitely been a great marriage, man, between the two, man, especially with artists, getting outside NBA players getting outside their comfort zone and, dropping songs here and there, stuff like that.
Yeah, and if anything, what they have in hip hop is this unwavering, unconditional love and support.
Correct.
I think about like LeBron and his relationship with Jay-Z. Like, remember back in the day when, LeBron was in high school, you had all these people coming to his games, and one of the people that was sitting courtside to watch him was Jay-Z. Everybody, we were all caught up in the hoopla surrounding LeBron as a high school phenom. And then you see Jay-Z courtside, and then they were able to form a strong bond and a strong relationship. And if anything, what I think about, and then I was going to answer your question earlier about like my favorite Shaq song, I would have to say the obvious one for me is Can't Stop the Rain, which was his duet with Biggie, and I think that kind of speaks to, like Shaq and Biggie, LeBron and Jay. You mentioned Chris Webber. I think about Chris Webber, the Fab Five, and EPMD. You think and E40 and the Warriors. Like, you go down the list, Drake and the Raptors. You think about that. There's that unconditional, unwavering support that is never ending. Like, you never hear about them, beefing or feuding with each other. Now, there may be feuds in rap separately and basketball separately, but when it comes to like those two merging together, like there's that unconditional love, and like LeBron can go to Jay for support and vice versa, and Shaq went to Biggie and Biggie went to Shaq, and so there was that feeling of I got you.
No doubt about it. I mean, and you talking about Jay-Z, was a brief owner of the Brooklyn Nets, was responsible for bringing the Brooklyn Nets to Brooklyn, and everything with the renovation and the redevelopment of Brooklyn, and all that area and everything like that, So Jay-Z impact in the NBA and also with the Ruckers. I believe it was 2003. So I think we're on 20 years of the big game that never happened between Fat Joe's team and Jay-Z's team, So right. So yeah, Jay-Z definitely has, been impactful and had a huge impact on how, NBA players and hip hop community, continued the relationship that has been built, for a long time. Like we said, going back to the Pee Wee Kirkland and Dr. J days, So just, with Jay-Z and, having the Rock Boys, we saw that he had, great friends with Carmelo Anthony as well, LeBron, D-Wade. He even mentioned, one point in time owning the Nets, he was either going to get LeBron or get D-Wade, So, but like you said, speaking on, and let's go to Golden State, right? Golden State, we just talked about with E40. E40 has been a lifelong Golden State Warriors fan, and it's like you see the relationship and the respect every Golden State player has, going back to the 80s and the 90s for E40, So it's a great thing to see, man. And, just how more progressive the NBA is getting, versus under the David Stern era where, he wasn't such a fan of the hip hop culture, of the dress and everything like that, to where the dress code came about, So it's good to see how the NBA has changed and become more accepting of the hip hop community as a whole, So yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'm glad you bring up David Stern because obviously his him being the commissioner of the NBA at the height of Magic, Bird, Isaiah, certainly Michael Jordan, and it's interesting because when I think about we think about Michael Jordan, let's say, we think of him often within the context of hip hop. I mean, the Air Jordan is a primary source of, apparel for those of the hip hop generation. And he came up of the hip hop generation, and he is of the hip hop generation. But I was doing some research, and this was around the time that The Last Dance was on TV, was that Mike sort of had a complicated relationship with hip hop. Like, he embraced it on the one hand, but then on the other hand, he didn't want really much to do with it. Like, he was like, there's a clip of him on the classic show Yo MTV Raps back in the late 80s, and he was interviewed by the great and the legendary Fab Five Freddy. And when I watched it, you could tell that Mike was genuinely, I got the sense that he was genuinely uncomfortable. Like, he wasn't so much of a hip hop head, even though, like, not just the Air Jordan and all it stood for and all it represented in the culture, but when you watch MJ's game, it's hip hop. It's hip hop. And he sort of had a complicated relationship. And I think, going back to your point about David Stern, like, Michael was held in such high regard, and rightfully so. I mean, given all that he did for the game, internationally speaking, but he was always seen as like the example, be like Mike, no pun intended. Be like Mike, but then don't be like Allen Iverson. Right.
I mean, that's a good comparison, the contrast of it, Michael had an old soul, right? Michael Jordan was the face for so many things, or was the face of controversy for so many things, So Michael Jordan, I compare Michael Jordan to Michael Jackson, right? That they were being pulled in so many different ways. They had to be the face and a voice for so many people. And everything was always under the microscope. Everything they said, everything they did, how they dressed, where they ate, their whole life was under the microscope. So depending on what was said, how it was said, where they were seen, different things of that nature, depending on, where it came from, was how somebody really felt. It was either you loved Michael Jackson and Michael Jordan, or you didn't. I feel like, even more to what you're saying, Michael Jordan, even in his own community, in the Black community, is where the draw, the pull was. He was impactful and a cultural icon in the inner city for Blacks that was successful, right? So he had to answer to this crowd. He had to answer to a different crowd. Then rumors was that, he invested in the prison system, which wasn't true. That was a white guy from Oregon, so, right. But people really didn't do their homework on it. It was, Michael Jordan invested into the prison system. He trying to lock up his own people. Then you had people saying that he was responsible for the starter jackets, for the murders of starter jackets and his tennis shoes, and the Republicans wear tennis shoes comments as well, so, but at the same time, he was giving to the NAACP, and the United Negro College Fund, and different things of that nature, donating to the city of Chicago, so it was Michael Jordan. You just had to really understand Michael Jordan, and really have to do your own research to know who Michael Jordan really was. And like they said, a lot of things that he didn't want it to be known because he was doing it out of the kindness of his heart. But he also admitted that he never was a politics guy, So for me, being a fan of Michael Jordan and comparing Michael Jordan and LeBron James is more engaged. He's more involved. He wants to know more about politics. Michael Jordan wanted to play basketball, and that was pretty much it, just like Kobe Bryant. Even though later on Kobe Bryant got a little bit more political active and more involved with, social issues and stuff of that nature. But Michael Jordan was Michael Jordan.
Yes, he was. And that's why there'll be nobody like him. I mean, he's really the standard bearer for so many, in so many ways, particularly when it comes to just the growth of basketball as a whole. I mean, you go around the globe and everybody knows the famous Air Jordan logo. It's unmistakable. And that's why, like, when Doe joins us, I mean, wanting to talk a little bit more about, certainly how Chicago influenced him. I mean, I can just tell, like, from my experience, I'm not from Chicago, but I'm from Rockford, Illinois, and it's interesting because you and I are not too far apart. Beloit and Rockford, we're in the same vicinity.
Right.
I didn't have a park to go to when I was growing up. I come from a rural town, so we did have a park, but it's not a park where you had to necessarily prove yourself basketball wise. You had to prove yourself on the jungle gym. I don't know, but yeah, I guess, yeah, but it's but like when it comes to just all around the world, bringing it back to hip hop, you just look all over the world, and hip hop has touched every single facet of the globe. And and you look at some of the hot spots where basketball is very popular around the globe. I mean, that's where hip hop has really hit its peak. So that merger between basketball and hip hop has been able to touch on a global level. You look at China, you look at different parts of Europe, you look at just all around the world. There's that merger is global.
Yeah. No doubt.
And go ahead.
No, I was just saying, no doubt. I mean, you brought up China. That's very interesting. Stephon Marbury, he's been huge over there in China. Being from Coney Island, New York, and being a huge hip hop icon himself, branded himself. Left the NBA. Was one of the first athletes to have his own signature shoe. Shout out to Patrick Ewing. I know we're gonna be going on break here soon, taking our first commercial break. But Patrick Ewing, Stephon Marbury, those were two of the first, I would say, stars and superstars that had their own shoe line. Outside of Shaquille O'Neal, put his in Walmart. So definitely been athletes who has merged, doing their own thing as far as understanding themselves as a brand and how they can impact, the hip hop community as well. And for Patrick Ewing, his Patrick Ewing shoes was a huge seller, being a star player in New York, and then with Run DMC rocking his shoes and things of that nature. Patrick Ewing had a great thing going on, and it was great to see that he understood business, and that he was business, or a business himself.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned Stephon Marbury, because when I think about him in terms of him being a hip hop icon, one of the foundational principles of hip hop, to quote the great hip hop journalist and activist Kevin Powell, he likes to say that hip hop is all about making something out of nothing, taking something, making something out of nothing, and winning on one's own terms. And that's what really Marbury did when it came to his transition from the NBA to China. Because he was left with nothing after the NBA kind of cut him loose, but then he was able to make something in China, and then he was able to blow up the way he did. And so I don't know, the Coney Island never left him. He went from Coney Island to Beijing effectively.
Not at all. So loyalty is royalty. Loyalty is everything. And when you're loyal to you first and foremost, and loyal to your people, to your community, and just loyal to doing the right thing, being a good person, having a good heart, having good in your heart, loyalty gonna come back to you. I mean, everyone knows why, David Stern, pretty much kicked Stephon Marbury out the league, and to go over to China, to a whole different country, to the other part of the world, and to brand himself and to be accepted, for who he is, says a lot, So I love it for Starberry. Definitely one of my favorite players all time, to come out of New York and college basketball and the NBA, and it's sad that the NBA don't embrace Stephon Marbury the way that they should, because its impact in basketball in the NBA and just in basketball in general is huge. You really can't talk about basketball, college, NBA, or playground basketball, New York basketball, without mentioning Stephon Marbury.
Certainly. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take a break. You're watching Game Recognize Game, and don't go away.
Streetwear is not dead. The next wave of black fashion comes out of the Bronx, New York. Rich Kid Clothing, picking up where FUBU, Rockaware, and Kyle Kanai left off. Rich Kid is for the next generation of Get Fly fashion heads. Use promo code MELLOW23 for 15% off your next order. And for orders over $100, there is free shipping. Again, use promo code MELLOW23 for 15% off your next order.
In 2006, we founded Yeti Coolers with a simple mission: build a cooler we use every day if it existed. One that was built for the serious outdoor enthusiasts rather than for mass discount retailers. One that could take the abuse we knew we'd put it through, out in the field and on the water. One that simply wouldn't break. We decided early on that production innovation would come from necessity and first-hand experience, not from market research and data analysis. Today, Yeti products perform when it matters most. Whether that be an excursion into the remote Alaskan wilderness, chasing redfish on the Gold Coast, or just getting together with friends in the backyard, we make gear that helps you stay out longer, travel farther, and live harder. Hashtag built for the wild.
All right, we are back with Game Recognized Game, and we're still waiting on Doe. We'll see if we'll be able to bring him on. But in the meantime, just enjoying the conversation with Mello. I mean, talking about just the sort of the origins between basketball and hip hop and how they've been able to stay strong over these last 50 years. So Mello, let me ask you this question. When did you first fall in love with hip hop?
The first time I fell in love with hip hop, I would say when Easy Does It came out. I had knew about Ice-T with Colors. I would say Colors. Colors was probably the first song that really made me fall in love with hip hop and really introduced me to hip hop. And the West Coast as a whole pretty much was my introduction to hip hop, to music.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. I got that song in my head now, Colors by Ice-T. And he's just
shout out Ice-T, man.
Shout out to Ice-T. Talk about a true OG of hip hop. All you have to do is just look him up and learn about his pedigree.
One of the few hip hop artists turned actors that had a long, successful career. A better acting career, entertainment career than he did a music career.
Certainly, and it got him in less trouble. I mean, no disrespect to Ice-T in that regard. But we love him. All right, look what we got here.
Yo.
My man, Doe from the Go.
How's everything?
Man, everything's blessed, my brother. How's everything your way?
Man, everything good, man. I had to fight through a crazy amount of traffic, but I made it in.
Man, that's
Chicago traffic is crazy.
I don't even know. Are you in Chicago right now? Ain't no telling where you might be, man. You could be anywhere in the world right now. That's a legit question.
I'm on the West Coast with it, man. Chicago is home, but that is not where I lay.
Yes, sir.
There's a difference between LA traffic and Chicago traffic. I mean, Chicago traffic is hectic in and of itself, but nothing compared to LA or West Coast traffic.
Super facts.
All right, so Mello, or Doe, you just came in at a great time. We're just in the middle of having a deep conversation about sort of the link between basketball and hip hop and why the merger between the two is so strong. Looking at the foundations, looking at the origins. I just asked Mello what made him fall in love with hip hop. So I'll ask you, what made you fall in love with hip hop?
Really, aside from the music, just really the culture aspect of it. Because, I'm an 80s baby at heart. So, being a kid in the 80s and then a teenager in the 90s was like the gap to like really study the culture and music of hip hop, as well as fashion and art and everything else that goes, along with it. You know what I'm saying?
Let's start.
That's what ties me into hip hop. It's not just the music; it's everything that's involved with the culture of hip hop. Because I'm in the fashion, I'm in the art, and I'm in the other things that surround hip hop. It's not just the music. The music is obviously the pillar. You know what I mean? But I just love the culture. So
Let's start right there. Let's. That's a great a good outside introduction of who you are. Let's start right there. This is Doe from the Go, born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. He's a visionary, visionarist, an American music industry producer, shaker, marketing guru, producer, A&R. He's the founder and the movement behind Stack and Starve movement. They produce mixtapes, DVDs, and also had a DJ coalition, the Stack and Starve DJ coalition as well. And has worked with some of the most famous artists from the city of Chicago and around the world. It's like Kanye West, Jada Kiss, Jeezy, Janye Aiko, and others. Big Sean, Dope. Let's let everybody else know what you got going on. Like you said, it's more than music. You got fashion, also producing your own music production as well, your own album as well called Mineral Water. Start where you want to start off, sir. We appreciate you for joining Game Recognized Game, episode 1.
Man, thanks for having me. I'm just hustling. You know what I'm saying? I just like to have my hands and my feet embedded in all good things. Because I'm a type of guy, I'll conquer some stuff, and then, once I feel like I won at it, I'll move on to the next thing. But I'll never stay in the same spot. I'm always like trying to move the culture forward. I'm always building new brands, and I'm always hustling. So with that being said, man, I've been having an incredible year when it comes to putting out a lot of different releases and managing and also developing acts. Right now, I'm in talks of trying to do like an art gallery chain through the ports of Denver, Portland, and Phoenix. So I'm looking to have a very cultural art gallery chain that's going to pretty much focus on legends in music. So when you come into these galleries, you're going to see extremely dope paintings. I don't know if you see this one right here. This is Prince. You're going to see stuff like that. You're gonna see stuff like that. You're gonna see stuff like that in my galleries. You might see Diana Ross, so you might see Josephine Baker, or I'm gonna focus on like a lot of the legends in music. You know what I'm saying? With these galleries, and that's what's gonna give it its own theme. You know what I'm saying? Aside from that, man, fashion. We got the bag language. We got a new season line coming out of apparel and bags. I'm doing a lot of stuff for like Haiti, Jamaica, and Africa, where you'll see the color themes of those countries implemented in the bags, and I'm gonna have the models of each descent take photos with them and stuff. I got a lot of great things happening, and even going into 24, I'm gonna get into the podcast world myself as well as write a book. Just always working, man. Just trying to make sure I'm always like ahead. You know what I'm saying?
No doubt about it. As I come to know you, that's all I've ever known about you. Like I told the guys, I told Zach, that I reached out and you reached back, and everything I know about marketing, promo, social media, you taught me that, and when I talk about, how hip hop has gave me life skills, job transferable skills, all of my skills came through hip hop, and a lot of people wouldn't believe it. And then when I talk about the aspects of how marketing and promotion and communication and different things that you taught me working with Stack and Starve, people like, oh, wow, now it makes sense, So, man, like I said, first and foremost, man, again, I appreciate you, man, for teaching me, bringing me into the hip hop community and teaching me things more than what I thought that I was going to know.
Yeah, blessings, man. It's great. It's a great thing to be able to mentor others and bring others into a world of just the knowledge around interest. Like, so it's like, okay, a lot of us, we want to be involved in something, but we might not know how or the know-how or how to do something. And then, we have somebody to embrace us. And even with me, I was mentored and, I was groomed into the business and into like the culture. So it's always good to get the love back.
For sure. Appreciate you. No doubt about it. Zach.
Definitely. Yeah, I was just going to add on to that because, Doe, we were talking earlier about how when you look at that merger between basketball and hip hop, you look at the relationships that Jay-Z and LeBron have. You look at the relationship that Shaq had with Biggie. You look at, just down the line, and it's almost a way of saying to each other, I got you and vice versa. I got your back, you got my back, and we go together. So I want to ask you, since you're from Chicago, and I work out of Chicago. I'm from Rockford, Illinois. Nice. But I make frequent visits to Chicago, and it's almost like a second home. I want to know about, what was it like being an 80s baby, growing up in Chicago, and then you had this certain guy by the name of Michael Jordan come into town and shake everything up. What was that like?
Man, I mean, honestly, in the 80s, I got to see Jordan play at least 10 times. And in the 90s, I probably went to at least 50 Bulls games. Like, the energy that he would bring to the stadium was crazy, man. Like, that place would be rumbling and shaking a sweat, man. Like, he was like one of those athletes that we'll never have again. And I know the whole basketball boxing talk thing is biased on some behalf, but I feel like the just athletes like that, we're not gonna get them duplicated. You know what I'm saying? Like he would literally run up and down the floor and just have a different energy compared to all the other. Not taking away from all the NBA players and everybody that had got a chance to play with Mike and against him, but he competed on a whole nother level. Like he was just something special to the city, man. And to be able to grow up, in Chicago and just watch the energy Mike brought to the city, it's like it was a time to be alive. It's one of the times to be alive, man. Like, it was a priceless moment to be living. And if I didn't get to go to the game, just to even know that he played for the team, and I'm talking about this stuff dates back to, early in the mid 80s when he was doing the dunk contest and, he was competing and participating in things to strengthen the brand and to show that he wasn't just boxed in. You know what I'm saying? That was the thing about Jordan. Jordan was an all-around athlete. He could do it all. You know what I'm saying? So even had good coaches too. He can coach a little bit too.
No doubt. And we were just talking about how, when you look at his game, you look at his whole aesthetic, it's true to hip hop. Like his game is real. His game is very, very hip hop.
Yeah, man. And that's the thing. And I'm not going to say that Jordan was an advocate for hip hop because he was not.
We were talking about that.
Yeah, but he still respected the culture and embraced those from the culture that he chose to embrace. It might not have been everybody. Now, Shaq, on the other hand, whole other different conversation. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to, blending him with the hip hop culture. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
Speaking, you're in fashion, though. The bag language clothing line is definitely blowing up. I remember when you said, bro, this is my next move, so, and I know before you even told me your move, you had ain't no telling how long you put into creating and the thought of it, and we talked about going back to Pee Wee Kirkland, Walt Frazier, guys that, took fashion, took their swag and that urban culture swag, and they brought it to the NBA. Dr. J to the ABA. Michael Jordan was also a fashion icon as well. He linked up with Spike Lee. Being from Chicago, being in the fashion yourself, how do fashion and basketball, compare or relate to you, and why it's impactful to the culture?
Well, if you notice, when it comes to basketball or the NBA, there's always those players. There's always those players before the game happens. You always get to see the outfit they got on, when they walk into the stadium. It's like a fashion statement, right? Even we saw
Yes,
with
sir.
Jordan, we saw with Dennis Rodman, we saw with Shaquille O'Neal, we saw with Dwayne Wade. There's always about the outfit. Even LeBron, it's about the fashion. It's about what he got on going into the game. How's he going to dress when he leave? So that's what I feel like fashion is. Fashion is like it's suspenseful and it's mysterious because you want to know even with Dennis Rodman, back to him, like he was unpredictable. We didn't know like what the new shirts was going to be. If it was going to be a lot of holes ripped in them. It was it's all about being innovative and trying to just come up with different ways to not be boxed in. And always try things. That's how I am with fashion. I always try things. I'll pick a shoe that I just know is different, just because I just like picking different shoes or just being different. I like coming in a room and purposely, being different or just standing out the box. So that's why I think fashion and basketball plays a role with each other because they both need each other. One needs each other one needs one to expose what fashion is, and then sports also play a role in fashion because even off the court, you got the whole jersey thing. We used to rock a lot of throwback jerseys and football and basketball stuff. So, it's all about just, switching it over. It's like, okay, I might not be playing basketball, but I got on this dope jersey, you know what I'm saying? Or this dope football jersey. I remember back in the day, hockey jerseys was crazy around 93, 94 hockey jerseys, and then the throwbacks came in early 2000s. Football jerseys and basketball jerseys, they're never going to leave the culture. You know what I'm saying? Those are the two like top ones. You know what I'm saying? Even baseball jerseys. Baseball jerseys are in that top 5, but I think football and basketball jerseys, in a fashion sense, are like the biggest tools that people like to have, when it comes to like, being comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just going back to the question that was asked earlier, like when did you fall in love with hip hop? For me, honestly, it really, now that I think about it, it really had more to do with the fashion than anything else. Like the fashion for me was the first introduction into hip hop before the music itself. As someone who grew up with Michael Jordan and the Bulls, I was always just impressed and astounded and just transfixed by how they presented themselves. Mike especially, I mean, and Dennis Rodman, although Dennis Rodman is an entirely different conversation. And much respect to Dennis Rodman, because that's hip hop within and of itself, of being able to take something out of nothing and winning on your own terms, to quote Kevin Powell. Like he was hip hop in his own regard. But yeah, for me, it was like watching those guys and how they presented themselves and how they dressed. I mean, you think about Mike with the bald head and the earring, and it just looks so good. And it was a statement in and of itself. And really, Doe, if you ask me, I love how you said earlier about how, there's a difference between hip hop, the music, and the culture. And I want to ask you, why is it important for you to make sure that you are dabbling in all aspects of the culture and not just the music side of it?
Well, it's more so just about not limiting yourself. It's about reach. It's about having a broader network. It's also about being able to display your talents, just to move your legacy with more purpose versus be limited on people doing research on you and find out, okay, all he did was that, or all he did was this. Oh, he did all that. Okay, cool. So now it's like, you got a bigger way to kind of like, have outreach. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I am. I can't say that when I first started dibbling in hip hop that I was involved in fashion and in art. But eventually, the more I got successful with one thing, I started to want to kind of spread my wings a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, you being a lifestyle branding at Def Jam, also an A&R as well. And like I said, working with different artists, who has different fashion statements, and identify with different markets. How important was that for you, being involved in hip hop, and being involved in fashion yourself, but also studying and knowing the artists that you was working with and how to identify with them when it came to marketing them and just making sure that they felt comfortable with your marketing plan for them?
Well, how I do it is my process is pretty much building with the artist first and foremost, finding out what the artist's passions are. You know, finding out what the vision is of the artist, finding out, what makes the artist go hard, what motivates the artist, what makes the artist comfortable, and then when you start to build with an artist, that gives you ideas on things to contribute to who they are, whether that's fashion ideas, whether that's knowledge to gain for future endeavors, or whether that's just all around branding for their marketing sense. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm just big on the direction of an artist and where an artist is going, and that's going to play a role when it comes to having the proper outfits or trying something, even trying to be different and try to be not be in the box.
For sure. Is there one artist that challenged you a lot when it came to identifying, their lights, and fashion?
No, not yet. I haven't met an artist yet because see, the thing is, I respect all artists, so I try to be the guy that just kind of listens first before I come in and I just start like trying to do me and take it over. I try to listen first. That way I know how they coming, and then we kind of meet in the middle.
Yes, sir.
That's awesome. Who were some of your influences and some of your inspirations that enabled you to be able to do what you do now?
Well, so many. So when you ask me that, you would have to ask, in an executive way or a musical way or a fashion way, because there's so many. So when you ask me, I would need you to ask me as far as like what direction, as far as being an executive, as far as the fashion world, as far as music itself, because I got so many inspirations. Because I admire certain fashion guys, I admire certain executives, I admire certain, so it's like I would need to know exactly what you mean by that.
Yeah, let's go with fashion. Who are some of your fashion influences?
Definitely Dapper Dan. Just because he was able to do something in the 80s that was never done before, as far as remixing designer. I admired that just as a kid, because we were trying as a kid. You're trying to figure out how does everybody have these trench coat Louis Vuitton jackets, and it's like now you figure out this guy over here in Harlem, New York, does it, and that's what I liked about him in the 80s. And then you got Groovy Lou, and then you got Kanye West, obviously. You know what I'm saying? He's a major influence. Really, for me, with Kanye, it's because he dominated music, and then he was able to dominate fashion. So that was like very impressive. Like it just showed you that you can really do anything you want to do. You know what I'm saying? Those three.
That's
no,
dope.
But being from Chicago, we know Chicago is a city where fashion takes us. It speaks for itself. Chicago is a city where people like to dress. Men like the 3-piece suits, and women love to dress as well, right? How much impact does Chicago's fashion scene have on you going forward, and just how you go about your daily business when it comes to dressing?
Well, I was always a student of the game when it comes to Chicago fashion, the Chicago fashion world. Back, like I said, in the 80s, we pretty much emulated what was going on in hip hop. But I think in the 90s is when Chicago started to adapt their own fashion statements. We had these coats, and the material felt like towel. Felt like they call them towel coats, because the entire like coat, it had a hoodie and it felt like a towel. So towel coats were in around 93. And then on the towel coats would be like cartoons of like Looney Tunes or Bugs Bunny or something like that. We wore jeans that had like half of the jeans was suede on the front, and then the rest of it was like jean. And then the pelly leather thing came into play. You know, in the 90s, early 90s, we wore a lot of pullovers, you know, with like a college team, like it would be Georgetown or like Miami. And then, you know, we had these hats. They called them the 150 hat. Basically had like a watch timepiece in the middle. They were custom made. And then the brim of the hat was either suede or crocodile leather. It was very Chicago-ish. You know, the stuff that Chicago used to do fashion-wise, you know, we came up with on our own as far as how we put it together. So that's what I remember the most, man. Just really, you know, moving with the trends when it came to anything involving fashion in Chicago, like whether it was shoes, whether it was the jackets, whether it was the hats. You know, it was all about the accessories, you know what I'm saying? And then obviously throwing like Cazelle shades in there. If you know about Cazelle's, shades, you know, adding all the other accessories to complement, you know what I'm saying? And then in the 2000s, man, everything was big. You know, all the clothes was big. So, you know, we had big shirts, big jeans. You know, I used to wear 5-6X shirts, man. My shirts was huge. You know, my jeans were extremely baggy. You know, and I saw something with Ludacris earlier. We were speaking on that. Like, you know, we used to be able to hide a lot of stuff in our clothes. You know, now clothes is more skinnier or more fitting. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's like, you know, everything on bulge out now.
That's true. Like, yeah, and you mentioned the sneakers. I mean, we can't forget about that. And you know, you think about how, you know, kind of bringing it back to basketball. You know, you look at the beginning and Converse was hot. And then you get to the 80s and then Adidas was hot. I mean, obviously Run DMC with their song My Adidas, you know, that was the hottest thing to get. And then obviously Nike comes along, and, you know, Michael Jordan's attachment to Nike was symptomatic and huge for obvious reasons. So, you know, the accessory, you know, the sneakers were really, I mean, all the accessories meant something, but the sneakers really meant something, especially when it came to that linkage between basketball and hip hop. And you didn't necessarily have to be a baller or a rapper to be able to accessorize. Like, you just had to be down with the culture in and of itself. And so that makes it even more profound. I mean, I can remember just as a kid always wanting to get my hands on a pair of Air Jordans. I got my first Air Jordans when I was, oh gosh, I want to say 9 or 10. And this was around the time that Mike was coming back the third go around with the Washington Wizards, which, you know, you can make the case is a footnote to his career. It doesn't really mean too much. But those were my first pair of Air Jordans that I got. And it's still a special memory for me.
Yeah, I remember that. Mine was, I was 6. I was either 5. No, I was 5 because that was the Jordan 1. I actually have a photo of them on. And in the 80s, I only had one pair of Jordan 1s, which was like 85. And then in 89, I had a pair of 4s. And that was it for the 80s for me. Because, like, I'm a sneakerhead now. I own well over 4,000 pairs. You know what I'm saying? But, like, back then, I couldn't get sneakers like that. I think that's probably why I like sneakers so much, because I couldn't really get sneakers like that. I had ups and downs when it came to finances in my family. So I had moments where I had a fresh pair of shoes, and then I had moments where I didn't. So I think now I'm probably so much embedded into the sneaker culture because I never really used to get as many pairs of sneakers as I really wanted to when I was a kid. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Would you ever consider designing your own shoe, or have you already done that?
Yeah, I would consider designing my own shoe, but I always want to be able to be amongst other energies, because I just feel like it'll be more successful if I'm around a lot of collaborative energy. You know what I'm saying? Because I keep a vision, but I also want to, you know, get ideas, and, you know, we can come up with something together.
Speaking of different energies, collabing with different things, as I mentioned, that you're producing your own project, your own album, Mineral Water. We spoke about, you know, the players, NBA players, Shaq, Kobe, Damian Lillard, Chris Webber, and others that dropped hip hop songs or albums. Allen Iverson. What artist or NBA player would you consider putting on Mineral Water? And would you talk about the idea and the vision of Mineral Water, please.
So Mineral Water basically is another brand album series that I created. It basically has a lot of dope, soulful hip hop genre acts on it. The first project I executive produced, and now the second one I'm working on now, I fully actually did the production myself under another name that I call myself Uncle John III. So with that, I'm going to be releasing a new Mineral Water project later this year, as well as the documentary. And I would probably have to say Shaq for sure on my first choice. And then my second choice, man, I don't want to like misquote his name. And I can't even remember who he is, but I listened to his CD, and his CD was good top to bottom. He plays in the NBA. I just can't remember his name right now, but he makes great, dope music. I love to have him on that too. I forgot his name. I can't remember what his name is, but I think he's the best rapper. He's the best NBA player that raps right now, to me.
Damian Lillard?
What's his name?
Damian Lillard?
What's his rap name? He got a rap name too.
He do. I can't remember what it is.
I can't remember.
No, he got that might be him because he got a rap name. He got a rap
he do. Yep.
So he play under one name and then he rap on another name. As soon as I hear the name, I'm be like, that's him.
Zach, you looking it up?
Yeah, I'm looking it up. I found it. Dame Dollar. That's what
Dollar. I'm tripping. I'm tripping.
Dame Dollar make dope projects. He make dope projects.
He does, and I was telling Mello earlier that, you know, when you look at his trajectory of his career, being able to merge ball and rap, he didn't necessarily have to, he didn't really have to prove himself in the way that, say, a Shaq did or a Chris Webber did or a Kobe did when they ventured into it. Because when they did it, people were like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? But then Damian Lillard was able to just sort of put out a rap album and establish pedigree right from the get-go, and that didn't compromise him in any sort of way.
Yeah, and you know, he levered his relationships. I mean, he got a lot of nice features. The first album I heard from him, I heard during the pandemic. And it was either right before the pandemic or during the pandemic I heard this album. And he had a lot of good features on that. He had Wayne on there. He had a lot of good features on there. I'm like, I was impressed. So I like it. I like the production. But it'll be Dame Dollar or Shaq for sure.
For sure.
Definitely. And Mello and I were just talking. He posed the question, so I'll pose it to you, though. Who was a better rapper, Kobe or Shaq? Shaq.
No disrespect to Kobe, rest his soul, but Kobe bombed with that one. He bombed with that. Shaq was good from the start. Like from his rookie year coming in, you know, he had rap with the Fushnikins, and he instantly, when he got introduced into the NBA, he also displayed his rap talents right then and there, and it was fresh from the start. He just got better. He got better and better.
Mm-hmm. I now remember the songs that Kobe rapped on. He did a song with Brian McKnight, and he also did a song with Tyra Banks, believe it or not.
Yeah.
I forgot about the song with Tyra. I forgot about that. Right.
Yeah.
I forgot about him.
So yeah, he tried. I mean, he did his best, but he was more suited for basketball.
For sure.
But, yeah. So and then also, since we're here on the 50th anniversary of hip hop, obviously, you know, this podcast and, you know, examining the relationship between basketball and hip hop wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for the legendary, the incomparable Kurtis Blow and his song Basketball from 1983. Yes, I mean, it just speaks for itself, you know, all the references that he made, and it's sort of broke down. You know, people sometimes ask why basketball and hip hop have such a strong bond. All you have to do is just listen to that song and it'll explain it for you.
That's right. And that's what I love about old school hip hop too. there were never elements left out when it came to anything that was involved in Black excellence. When it comes to like basketball, football, or anything, any sport that just champion people from the culture. You know what I'm saying? So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And you look at sort of the you look at all the elements of hip hop, it just comes naturally once it applies to basketball. Certainly you can have the elements can certainly apply in other sports, but it's sort of much more difficult. Whereas in basketball, it just comes so easily.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I know you. No, my bad. Go ahead, Zach.
No, go ahead, Mello. It's all you. It's all you, Mello.
Though I want to ask you, you're very, in tune with what's going on, in life. Being from Chicago, you know how Chicago, the lifestyle in Chicago. You're in LA. You've been around. We've also seen to where how in politics and in life, that politics have always reached to the hip hop community and to the sports community. Being in your position and with marketing, how important is it for artists, if they approached you, such and such candidate want me to do a show, to do a fundraiser, how important is it for you and advice that you would give an artist, when it comes to marketing and just knowing their voice and, using their platform to the best of their ability to uplift the community or in the world and as a whole?
Well, the first thing I always tell whoever that has a passion or interest or even just desire about entering the business or just being a part of the culture is to study. Do your research first and foremost, and then give yourself time to absorb all information that you learn about the culture and about the business. See how they work hand in hand. And then that's when the networking starts to come in play. Build your relationships and just be a sponge, for a while. A lot of people that do too much talking, who lack knowledge, those are the wrong type of people. So you don't want to be a part of that world. You want to be the one who observes it all first and then absorb the energy. That way you can put it back into the universe correctly.
Being from Chicago, we heard that Michael Jordan had invested in prisons and things of that nature. Michael Jordan said Republicans wear shoes. Michael Jordan was people held him responsible for people being murdered for his shoes. Speaking of, Michael Jordan said he really didn't get involved with politics. He was very shallow on his knowledge of politics. Being an 80s baby, and when all that was going on with Michael Jordan, do you respect Michael Jordan more for saying, hey, I donated to this cause, but I really don't know much about politics? Do you respect him more for saying that, understanding his position, versus somebody like LeBron James who engages in social issues and in politics?
Well, things are different now. I think that if the internet existed during Jordan's era, he would have been able to get the knowledge himself. But since the internet didn't exist, he was moving pretty much on, what his advisors told him or how to, told him what to do, how to invest or what to be involved in, what's good for his brand. I think that is different. I think it's different now with the internet now because, even when someone tells you something, you can go do an actual fact check. You know what I mean? So that's the difference between now and then. So I think with LeBron being a little more hands-on, that's got something to do a lot more with technology. And that's what I believe.
For sure.
Yeah, and just on that point, though, you mentioned who were some of your fashion influences. So since, bringing up the business side of things, who are some of your influences or executives within hip-hop who have influenced you in the work that you do?
Russell Simmons, for sure, Suge Knight, even the underdogs, people that don't really get the credit they deserve. And there's countless names of them. It's just a lot of people that did a lot of stuff in the back who never really got that just do. Like Dame Dash, Irv Gotti. It's a lot of people that I respect because I just know their story and I know the side. So yeah, I'm influenced by everyone who took risk.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the name that I think of that comes to mind, may he rest in peace, Andre Harrell.
Yes, sir.
From Uptown.
Yes,
Wouldn't be no Diddy, wouldn't be no Mary J. Blige, wouldn't be no Jodeci if it wasn't for him. So yeah, that was hard when he passed away.
Yeah, it was terrible, terribly hard. And then, again, like I said, it's just that's the thing about being an executive. You're not a true executive until you're able to change other lives and put other people on and make them even more successful than you. You know what I mean? It's like once you can take someone, and there's a rap quote. I forgot who said it, but they talked about how you measure your success based on who you bless. You know what I'm saying? So that says a lot.
It does, certainly. And I'm curious. I mean, we mentioned Michael Jordan, we mentioned Damian Lillard, Shaq, Kobe. Who are some of your other favorite ballers that you have always looked up to?
We can go Sean Kemp, we can go Tim Hardaway.
Ooh.
Who else I liked? I liked what's my boy name, man, with the fish eyes. He played for Boston, man. Man, what's his name? D Brown. Yeah, D
Brown. Okay,
good one.
Yeah. I just remember those certain ball players who had an energy about them. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
Those are some good
ones. It's been 50 years of hip hop. What has been the most or your top 3 iconic moments in the 50 years of hip hop?
As far as seeing?
Yes. As far as seeing.
Okay, so one would be Snoop and Dre when they drove the 6'4" out on stage at the Soul Train Awards. That blew me away. Pause. That had me to see that, to see them come out on stage in an old school Chevy and bounce it with hydraulics. Yes. Seeing that in 93, being a 13-year-old watching that on TV was truly crazy. Fast forward to the moment when Death Row invaded the Source Awards in 95. Mm-hmm. They had the cells. Whoever built that set for them, they had cell blocks. Everybody had their own cell block. So you had Rage in one, Dr. Dre in one, Dog Pound was in one cell, DJ Quick was in one cell, Nate Dogg was in one cell, and then this is the crazy part nobody knows. They had an empty cell with a cutout of Tupac. This is why he was in jail.
Yes.
And this is before he even signed the death row. It's like they manifested it. They literally had an empty cell with a cutout of Tupac. It's like they just knew. And this was before they signed him. It was way before they signed him. That was a very iconic moment. And then Snoop comes out on the stretcher, blew it up, crazy. And then obviously Bad Boy performed and Biggie. There's a lot of great moments in hip hop. Third moment would be, I remember Jay-Z coming out doing H to the Izzo. And that was a proud moment because that was Kanye's first major placement as far as like the single. That was Kanye's first big single. So for Chicago, that was a big deal. Seeing Jay-Z come out and perform H to the Izzo, and it was Kanye West that produced it.
Yeah. Nice.
Those are certainly indelible moments. Yeah, I mean, and we're almost coming up upon the conclusion of our first episode, but I do want to say, I do want to acknowledge that it's very special that we are debuting this podcast on this particular day, which is the 38th birthday of the late great Nipsey Hussle. Yes. I mean, you think about. I know. I mean, you think about what he represented, what he embodied, and he, just like you, dabbled in every aspect of the culture. When you saw him courtside at Laker games, and when he passed, you saw LeBron and you saw so many ballers just pour their heart and soul out for him. What has he meant to you?
Really, what I respect about Nip, because I got to meet Nip. I got to meet him in 2009. He was a part of the XXL Freshmen, and they did a show out in New York, which I actually documented. I have the footage. You know what I'm saying? I just haven't released it. But you could see then that he had a vision for himself. Like you could see as his younger self, I didn't get to meet the Nip, that passed. But the young Nip I met, you can see that he was a special guy. He was going to be doing something. You can just tell. Just from having a conversation, you can tell. It was an amazing moment. But I felt like, he was definitely a hustler, been through every emotion, was getting very mature when it comes to like knowledge of self. He was about empowerment. He was about, just giving energy back and giving back in general. You know what I mean? Like what he represented, especially coming from a gangbanger to a businessman and a father and a husband, etc. It was all legendary for him.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, nobody like him. He lives on in all of our hearts, without a doubt. So, I mean, we can keep this going. But Doe, I mean, we just can't thank you enough. Mello, shout out to you for bringing Doe along, and Doe, just keep up the great work that you're doing. Excited for what you have coming up, and we really appreciate you joining us for our first episode of Game Recognized Game.
Man, thanks for having me, man. Whenever y'all need me to come back on, I'm gonna come back on. We're gonna add some more flavor to it. I'm always
no doubt.
Hey, definitely we'll reach back out to you because there's a couple other episodes that you could definitely drop some knowledge on as well. That, like I say, it'll be great. It'll definitely be great.
Thanks for having me, y'all.
Appreciate you.
Blessings.
For sure. Peace.
And Mello, you want to let them know about when they can join us again?
Yes, the next episode will be coming up September 15th?
16th.
September 16th will be the next episode. And on that episode, we will be talking more in depth about hip hop and the basketball community and just how it merged from the playground, even though we talked about it today, but just how it went even more global. So September 16th will be the next episode.
Yep. And in that episode, we're going to talk more about the college games. So we'll talk about like Georgetown. We'll talk about the Fab Five from Michigan. We'll talk about the UNLV Runnin' Rebels of the early 90s. We'll talk about how hip hop found a place in the college game and all of the different triumphs and circumstances that those teams were able to experience, and how hip hop was really central to their game and their broader cultural impact. So,
Georgia Tech, the Lethal Weapon 3, with Kenny Anderson, Dennis Scott, who rapped with Shaquille O'Neal, who had a song. So episode 2 is definitely very, very, very cultural, from the playground, the projects in New York, and just how it blew up in the college game.
Yep. And so be sure to join us then. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe to Team MBS Media on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Instagram. Follow Doe on his Twitter handle. You can follow Mello at Twitter and Instagram. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Drave Zachary, so my last name and my first name. Follow me on there, and we'll keep you all posted about Game Recognized Game as we go forward from now until December. So with that in mind, we want to thank all of you for joining us for our first episode, and we will see you back in September. So thank you all for joining us, and have a great night, and peace and love.